So 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Vibhuti Yoga because Vibhuti means the glory, and it lists all the glories of the Supreme Being, the one source and the sustenance of all. So if we look at the Gita, as we saw, the first 6 chapters gave the entire context of the teaching. The In the second chapter itself, the full teaching was given in terms of both Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, and then it was expanded in the next few chapters. And then from the seventh chapter onward, Krishna brings it to the platform of devotion by giving this sense of the infinite glory and therefore the easy way to recognize this through loving devotion. So the next, from 7th till 12th, will be in this mood. In the ninth chapter also we saw the same mood of devotion with beautiful verses like Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ejana Paryupasate. Those who simply remember me and abide in me with love, for them everything is revealed by me, he said. So in this chapter, similarly, Krishna proceeds to give the various glories by which he can be known. So first Krishna begins by saying that I will reveal my glories to you, O Arjuna, because you are dear to me. He's continuing in the same vein as the ninth chapter. And he says, first recognize that everything is coming from me. So Krishna says, Aham adirhi devana maharshinam cha sarvashah. All the various natural forces which we call devas, all the great rishis, all the great maharishis, everyone is coming forth from me. And one who knows this in this way, that everything comes forth from me alone, he is situated in true wisdom. And therefore all qualities, so we see, when it comes to beings, it is every manifest, animate and inanimate being comes forth from the one supreme being, and all qualities also come from him. He says buddhir jnanam asammoha kshama satyam damashama. So there is a lot of qualities: intelligence, forgiveness, truth, controlling the senses, sukham, dukkham, pleasure, sadness, bhayam, fear, abhayam, fearlessness. So, one of the important things which is very key to recognize this is God transcends even good and evil. So, normally we of course associate goodness with the Supreme Being, but in reality, the most mysterious aspect which befuddles many is, why is there suffering? Why is there evil in this world if God is all good? And that answer is given very beautifully in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna in many places, where he says that everything comes forth from me, and therefore I am beyond good and evil. So the truth of Bhagavan is beyond even the duality of good and evil. So when we look at the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, sattva is the mode of goodness, rajas is passion, which results in a lot of activity which can go either way, and tamas is darkness, which is the mode of both laziness as well as sloth, as well as evil, and all the rest. And all of these are coming forth only from the same one source. So if we look at the truth that consciousness is the substrate for everything, even when one is acting in the most ignorant and therefore evil ways, that ignorance is underlined by pure consciousness, just as one acting in a very positive way is also underlined by pure consciousness, and just as one who is acting in a very passionate way is also underlined by pure consciousness. So consciousness, which is the nature of being, is inescapable regardless of the qualities of becoming. So this is the most important recognition to have, is that becoming and being are both not related in the way that becoming can be anything, but being is the same, though they are also related in that becoming comes forth only from being. So, this is the mystery of why Krishna says in many verses that everything exists in me, but I am in nothing, because all becoming happens in being, but there is no being in becoming, if that makes, if one can see that. That is the, if you take our own body, the body is always in the process of becoming. It's changing form, it's changing shape, it's uh, every moment the cells are changing. Thoughts similarly are constantly changing, and therefore there are goals at the level of body, at the level of mind. One wants to perhaps become healthier, or one wants to perhaps become um, more proficient in a particular field of activity. All of these are goals at the level of body and mind. So there is becoming in the body and the mind. But the underlying beingness is untouched by this becoming. Whether we are resolving to become healthy, or we are in the mood of ignorance and dullness and becoming unhealthy, regardless, the being is the same. So that is why it's important to recognize that good and evil is also only in the realm of becoming, whereas the beingness is untouched by even good and evil. So Krishna says that's why that bhayam abhayam, both fear and fearlessness, come forth from me. Truth and untruth, everything comes forth, because all aspects of becoming is part of the play, and therefore they all come forth from me. And then Krishna continues and says, therefore, that if we look at the origin of creation, in whichever way we look at it, whether we look at it from the current scientific understanding or the way it's given in the Puranas, at the end of the day, all it means is there is a certain material energy that is at the root of all creation, and how this material energy manifests, whether it is through a big bang, or whether it is through some other means, it doesn't matter ultimately, because the material energy which is at the root of all creation, called Mula Prakriti, is coming forth from pure consciousness, and that is the essence and the source of creation. So Krishna says that's why that everyone and everything comes forth from me. He says aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante ma buddha bhava samanvitaha. He says aham sarvasya prabhavo means, and matta sarvam pravartate, everything comes forth from me, and in me everything abides. So that is what we, that statement has everything covered in it, because one, it says that the source of everything is God, and the other, it says, is the sustenance of everything is also God. So we are never separate from him, because we are, as we take ourselves, that is the body, the mind, the senses, the intellect, the activities, all of these are ever happening in the substrate of consciousness, and that substrate is Bhagavan, is what we call supreme being, and therefore that substrate is our true self, and we will see that declared by Krishna in a very beautiful verse. So here he says that to recognize this, to recognize that everything comes forth from the supreme one consciousness, and everything abides in it, everything dissolves in it. So the coming up, the being, and the dissolving are all happening in the same substrate of pure consciousness. So if we recognize this, then we can abide in this by this clarity. So that's why Krishna says then that just by therefore recognizing this and discussing only about this. So normally when we engage in any discussion, discussions can be at different levels. It can be uh, mundane affairs, it can be political affairs, it can be philosophy, but the ultimate way of elevating our discussion is by discussing this, by recognizing through words and through listening, that the ultimate truth is the one supreme being is the substrate for everything. And if we discuss this, then we are using our senses in the most appropriate and the most sublime way. Otherwise, of course, we have to use the senses for other activities, but this is the highest way in which we can use our, especially our listening, our speaking, our engaging, and then we can engage other senses as well, which is listed in Bhagavatam, for example, how we can dovetail all the senses towards this recognition. But primarily, it begins with listening and discussing about it, because when we the way we make sense of the world is through words, and when we use the words to cut through the confusion of the ego and have clarity, then that alone results in silence. So one of the important things to recognize is, um, words are very useful in bringing silence. So words do not have the truth, because words can only be a pointer. But without words, many times when one simply sits in silent meditation without clarity, then that, unless the there is ripeness due to some grace from past life or whatever, many times the clarity, the because of lack of clarity, there is not the ability to sit in silent meditation. And most people cannot even sit in silence, first of all. And even if they do sit in silent meditation, they are not able to um, make sense of it. I mean, there may be a moment of calm and thoughts subside. That happens even in deep sleep. So everyone, in one sense, enters meditation during deep sleep, but doesn't mean that when they wake up out of deep sleep, they come out as a jnani. So there is clarity that is necessary in order for even meditation to fructify. So that's why Krishna says, Katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Those who discuss about it and listen to this message, they are able to attain this clarity, and then they always abide in me. Here is a very famous verse. He says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. So those who therefore with love, priti purvakam, priti means love, with love, satata yuktanam bhajatam, they are always abiding in me and glorifying and worshipping by completely recognizing this as the only truth. The ones who are able to do that always, satata yuktana means ever, every moment, if one is alert, and in this alertness, one is able to recognize that the truth of being is only one, which is the substrate, which is pure consciousness, and therefore situated in this recognition with love, and seeing that in everyone, everything, everywhere, every moment, then that gives us the intelligence with which to engage in the world. So we don't have to worry about the specifics, because intelligence itself comes forth from the being, from this ground of being. So when we are situated firmly in the ground of being, then Krishna says, Dadami buddhi yogam tam. So I give them intelligence that's necessary to function in this life. And I also give them my grace by which they are always protected. So this is the grand declaration Krishna makes, that first recognize everything comes forth from me, the Supreme Being. Simply talk about it, discuss about it, listen to this message, and then hold on to this with love. And when you do this, then I give the intelligence that's necessary, because intelligence comes forth from the beingness. And I also bestow grace by which one realizes and becomes free of any darkness whatsoever. So, with this, Krishna concludes his initial message. Then Arjuna, he speaks a few verses very beautifully glorifying Krishna. He says, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam, Ajam Vibhum. He says, O Krishna, you are the supreme being, the supreme abode of all purity. You are the original, eternal Purusha, that is the eternal being, Adi Devam, the first source of all. And in fact, in the next chapter, Arjuna will say that I have been treating you as a friend, but Krishna, because of his mystical beingness, so Krishna is, he says in many verses that he is the self of all, and yet he also descends as this avatar as Krishna with full mystic potency under his control. In the fourth chapter, we saw this verse where Krishna says, I come with the entire yoga under my control, Yoga Maya, to bestow grace and to remove the wicked and to protect the saints. So many activities are done by Bhagavan when he descends as avatar. So he is at once, that is why the infinite supreme being, the supreme self of all, the pure awareness within, and the descent as Bhagavan as avatar. So recognizing this, Arjuna now says, you are the supreme being. Everything you speak is ultimate truth. Sarvam etad ritam mani. I accept everything you say as the supreme truth. So Arjuna asks a lot of questions as we saw. He demonstrates what is Shraddha by both being very reverent, at the same time questioning, inquiring, and testing. And now he has come to the platform where he accepts everything. And because he is, after all his questions have been satisfied, Arjuna says, I accept you, Krishna. I realize that you are the supreme being. And therefore, please now tell me, he asks, all your glories by which I can know you. So this is actually being asked by Arjuna for the benefit of everyone else, because Arjuna already has recognized, but he says, Vistarena Atmano Yogam Vibhutim Cha Janardana Bhuyah Kataya Triptirhi Shrunvato Nasti Me Amritam. He says, all the vibhutis, all the glories of you that is manifest in this creation, please tell everything by which people can recognize you. So now Bhagavan replies and he says, yes, Arjuna, I will reply, I will tell you all my vibhutis, but you need to know only one thing first. And this is the most beautiful verse among many beautiful verses of Gita. Krishna says, I am the self of all. Just know that. If you know that, you know everything. He says, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhuta Shayastitaha Aham Adischa Madhyamcha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. I am the self of all, residing in the heart cave of all. I am the beginning, I am the middle, I am the end. If you recognize this, then you know all my glory, and that is the supreme glory, is that everyone's self is the one supreme being. Then Krishna now goes on to give the glories in the manifest level of how, if we look at this universe, we see so many wonderful things. He says, everything that you see is my glory. He says, that which shines as the sun is my glory. And he says, that which shines in the night as moon is my glory. All the Vedas, and among the Vedas, the most beautiful Veda is called Samaveda, which is very musical. He says, that's my glory. He says, among beings, the most important faculty is their ability to be conscious, and that is my glory. And then all the devatas such as Shankara and Vishnu, they are all my glory. All the elements such as earth, water, fire, air, and space, they are all my glory. The great Maharishis such as Bhrigu are my glory. The great devatas such as Skanda. Skanda is the is Kartikeya, who is considered the greatest warrior. So he says, among all warriors, I am Skanda. Senaninam aham Skandaha. Among all the great trees, I am the banyan tree. Among all the Devarishis, I am Narada. Among all the Siddhas, I am Kapila. Among all the fish, I am shark. So everything we can see in this universe, Krishna gives a list of things which give us the infinite glory of Krishna, of the Supreme Being. So, whatever we see, which is looking grand, which is looking awe inspiring, is all coming from the same potency. He says, among mountains, I am Himalayas, among rivers, I am Ganga. So, every great Vibhuti we can see, and this list goes on. Krishna says, there's a set of poetic verses here, all of them where Krishna says, among weapons I'm thunderbolt, among snakes I am Vasuki, and among demons I'm Prahalada. So we saw the story of Prahalad in Bhagavatam, the great devotee who was born in the demon race. So he says, I'm Prahalad among demons, I am lion among animals, I am uh, eagle among birds. So if you look at all these various descriptions, they just give us the sense of whatever is supreme in every class of beings is coming forth. In fact, everything comes forth from him. We already saw Krishna right away said, Sarvam Mayi Pravartate. Everything is in me. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Sarvam Mayi Pravartate. Everything comes forth from me, and in me everything abides. So, this is the real truth which says that everything is included. But then we have a tendency to adore or revere that which is manifest as awe inspiring. We look at the Himalayas. When we go to the Himalayas, even we go to the foothills of Himalayas, they start to be very impressive. The further up north we go, they become more and more awe inspiring. And then if we see even pictures of Mount Everest, we see that it's completely awe inspiring, standing so tall. And that awe inspiring grandeur of Himalayas, Krishna says, is coming from me. So there is nothing that can be separate from him, and therefore that which is awe inspiring at any level, whether it's personalities, whether it is uh, aspects of nature such as mountains and rivers and trees and birds and animals. Krishna says, everything comes forth from me. All the various arts come forth from me, all the various beings. So he says, for example, among all those who wielded weapons, I am Sri Ram. So Ram is considered the most proficient in handling weapons, who is own avatar. And so he says, I am that. And he says, among all syllables, I am Om. Among all yajnas, I am japa. That is the there's various sacrifices given in the Vedas, but the highest sacrifice is simply abiding in Bhagavan with love. Japa means to take the name or the essence of the Supreme Being with love, and that's enough as the greatest sacrifice. So Krishna says, I am japa among all yajnas. I am Gayatri among all chantas. Gayatri mantra is the greatest mantra in the Vedas. So he says, among all mantras, I am Gayatri. Among all months, I am Margashirsha, which actually comes next month because it's a very sacred month. It is considered from a astronomical perspective. Among seasons, I am spring. Among rishis, I am Vyasa. And therefore, Krishna lists in so many beautiful verses here. Each verse just says which are all the glories of Krishna. Dando Damaitam Asmi. He says in this way, silent. I am silence among all secrets. I am the um, Niti Rasmi Jigishatam. He says, I am justice among all activities. So in this way, if you look at Krishna's descriptions here, all the vibhutis, whatever comes forth, coming forth only from him. So that is why it's important to first recognize that everything comes forth from the one supreme being, which he declared in the beginning, and everyone's self is the same supreme being. And yet, if the mind is bewildered by looking at impressive things, as we said, impressive people, impressive aspects of nature, that also recognize that everything, all that glory also comes forth from me. And therefore, Krishna completes this chapter by saying, Yachapi sarva bhutanam bijam tadaham Arjuna. He says, everyone's seed is me. Therefore, you don't have to worry about even knowing this and that. Everyone's seed is me. And finally, therefore, he declares, Atava bahunaitena kim nyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekamshena stitho jagat. He says, what is the use of even enumerating everything? Every single thing comes forth from me. And if you know that a simple spark of consciousness is what makes the whole universe function, then you have known everything. So, in this way, Krishna describes his Vibhuti by first giving a sense of the source of everything, then saying that everything abides in him, and finally, by enumerating all the various awe inspiring aspects of nature, and then concluding by saying you don't have to worry about anything finally. This is just to give you a sense that whatever you may be impressed with, and that changes with time. In Arjuna's time, certain things were impressive, including Arjuna himself. So that's why in one of the verses, Krishna says, I am Arjuna among Pandavas. So there are many impressive beings. So today there are also many impressive beings in various fields of activity. And so what we have to understand is all the impressive beings, all those who are doing anything that is great, and that can be great in a very positive way, or that can be also great in a very evil way, all of that comes forth from me. Krishna says that is why in one of the verses in this Vibhuti he says the guru of the devas called as Brihaspati is me, the guru of the demons called Shukracharya is also me. So the evil genius also comes forth from him, the true virtuous genius also comes forth from him. Science, therefore, which has got both great positive use and also great evil uses, comes forth from this. Technology comes forth from this. So, in today's context, if you look at all of science, all of technology, all of various developments, we can apply the same set of verses to current context as well and see that Krishna says everything comes forth from me. So when we recognize, if you are able to be satisfied with the first verse, then that's already complete, where he says everything comes forth from me and in me everything abides. And yet if you want to, if your mind is found to be going towards great achievements of various people, he says simply recognize that everyone who is great in every field is coming forth only from me. Their greatness comes forth from me because there is only one source for all activities, which is pure consciousness. So it is consciousness that is the substrate from whom comes forth the three modes of nature, and through that intelligence comes forth, power comes, strength comes, physical strength, mental strength, intellect, everything comes, and from that activities come, and from that all various manifestations of glories of different kinds come. So if you recognize this, then we don't have to praise or insult anyone. So the most important quality which we can then recognize is all praise and all credit goes only to one source. So if someone sings well, if we simply praise them, then it may actually hurt them in the long run because it only boosts their ego. But if we glorify the supreme intelligence that is making them sing well, then they can also be aware of this and be humble. If someone is very intelligent in math, if someone is very good in any activity for that matter, it is this the reason these verses are important is to recognize either in ourselves or in others any talent that is there is talent coming forth from the one supreme source. So it is not ours, and that because there is no ours, there is only the one supreme being who is manifest in various ways as all the various bodies, the various minds, the various senses, and all the rest. So by recognizing this, there can be no scope for pride, there can be no scope for credit, for blame. One can simply recognize all of it as his play, and in that is true peace. So that's the essence of this chapter. By recognizing his Vibhuti, we are in peace. And we can also act with great strength and great focus without getting any sense of ego about it. So, the idea of the whole of Bhagavad Gita is therefore, that is why, set in the battlefield, because we don't have to flinch from action and retire in order to realize this. We can be engaged very actively while recognizing that all activities come forth from Him. So, whatever is the unique set of talents we may have, we can identify it and work on it and use that to serve the society, while recognizing that this is coming forth from Him. And that is the best way to work, because then our energy is not wasted in looking for credit, affected by others' criticisms, looking for praise and all the rest. And we are engaged in work, and that work is only to serve society, serve whoever is around us at any given time. And when we are in this mode of service, using our particular skills in this mood, then we manifest the best. Then we actually become a Vibhuti ourselves, in the sense that Krishna's Vibhuti, the Supreme Being's Vibhuti, manifests through us as well in its own way. So everyone is in fact a Vibhuti of Bhagavan, because even each cell is a miracle, how it functions. Each plant, each tree, each baby, everyone is a Vibhuti, everyone is a miracle, everyone is the glory of Bhagavan, and each one of us are. So, if we recognize this, then we can truly realize our potential as well at the manifest level. At the unmanifest, our beingness is unaffected, and at the manifest level of becoming, our potential shall be automatically fully realized. All with the recognition that all of this is actually his potential. So even when we say our potential, all of these words are always only approximate. So we have to be aware that we are only referring to one source, and his potential manifest in infinite ways through infinite beings, and it is manifest through this body mind, as with every other body mind, as with every other aspect of nature. And then that can be utilized for realizing the highest expression of the potential as a service. And thereby we can all be an expression of this Vibhuti of Krishna, of Bhagavan.